What is up, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation? It is Monday, August 14th. So we are now 2 days removed from the Dallas Cowboys' first preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Unfortunately, the final score is Jacksonville 28-23, but there were some nice things to take, to pull from that game. Whether some of the veterans were, some of the young guys, they kind of showed a little bit. And mind you, there were not too many guys that are going to play in this game that are going to be your, expected major contributors because, again, you're trying to keep everybody healthy as possible. But there were a few things to pull from that game. Before we get going, I want you to go ahead and like, subscribe, share, comment down below. What are your first thoughts? Just coming off that preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. There were a few players, some young guys that we got a chance to see get their first real run in what you can consider NFL competition. So let's get going. Coming into the game, Mike McCarthy pretty much let it be known, at least 25 veteran players. He was not expecting to really see any playing time at all, if any, in this game, first preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because again, of course, you're looking for health, but at the same time, you do have to make sure you kind of be wary of that issue that can arise from guys just being too rusty. Because again, we know at the end of the day, these training camps are not really light. I mean, they're very light, I guess, when it comes to just the physicality a lot of times. But the Dallas Cowboys, what Mike McCarthy says his biggest thing that he takes from training camp so far up to this point is on both sides of the ball. We're talking about offense and defense. He says that he feels like the intensity of the practices is pretty much, the competition is not going to give most of these guys more than what he's expecting to get. So he feels it's best if they just practice against each other and suit up for the real games in week one. So we'll see exactly how that strategy works out. But what it does allow is some young guys to be able to get opportunity. And again, we're talking about some guys like a DeMarvion Overshown. I've been a big fan of. I've spoken on that multiple times. Also, let's see what Mozzie Smith could do. First round pick out of the University of Michigan, our defensive tackle. Big space eater he's expected to be. So we're going to be able to have to kind of get a chance to take a look at some of these guys. Like I said, also going into that game, you're going to be able to have opportunities from especially in the secondary, you're going to say, because, Trayvon Diggs is not playing. We know Stephon Gilmore obviously was also not going to play. Jaron Curse, Donovan Wilson still out a little bit with injury. Malik Hooker was not going to get any playing time. So I want to see exactly what this defensive back group could, accomplish. Starting off the game, you have second-year player Wanye Thomas, a safety from Georgia Tech. You're talking about a guy that's pretty much was a practice squad player for the most part last season. A guy dealt with some injuries. So what you're going to look for is exactly who's going to be able to take some opportunities and use them to their best of their ability. We're talking Wanye Thomas ends up with an interception on the first drive of the game against Trevor Lawrence. So it was good to see because the Jacksonville Jaguars, they threw out Trevor Lawrence. They had Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, some of their actual heavy lifters get some playing time. Calvin Ridley, I believe, got a little playing time. So what exactly were some of these guys able to get done? Like I said, Wanye Thomas making big plays. He's a guy that's kind of made a little name for himself in training camp up to this point, because again, knowing that you're having a few injuries here and there, we've seen Donovan Wilson been out of the lineup for a little bit. I want to see what exactly he was able to do. Also, a Tyler Coyle. I want to see what these guys can add. So as much depth as we can add to that safety position, we're going to look for a Wanye Thomas. Exactly, because it's more times than not what you're going to expect those backup DBs, especially, like I said, when we as veteran deep. You're going to look for some of these guys that are going to be able to perform on special teams potentially. So Wanye Thomas made a big play for himself and also this team. Going back on with Mike McCarthy pretty much said, of course, he wasn't expecting really any veteran leaders to play in this game. So we're talking about Leighton Vander Esch. We know exactly what he means to that linebacker group. We also know what we expected Leighton Vander Esch to be in his career. But what he has shown, and I give him lots of credit for, is just being able to say, even though dealing with those injuries and maybe not being the same player that he had kind of been projected after that first season, we saw his potential, but he has been able to keep that mental aspect of the game. And I think at this point, we can definitely call Leighton Vander Esch a leader in that linebacker room, especially. So what I wanted to see most is just being able to see Damone Clark out there without that, I guess, I don't want to say that safety valve, but that guy back there that at least can know where the position to be. So I want to see what Damone Clark can do. I think in that first drive alone, he ends up with 4 tackles. We see him flying all over the place, running sideline to sideline, making moves. And I wanted to see him how physical he'd be in stopping the run, because We know exactly how important that is. That is why you brought in a guy like Mozzie Smith. That is why you got also we're looking to re-sign a guy like Jonathan Hankins, which we're able to do. So you're going to expect Damone Clark to take that next leap. It's just big to see, again, because we're talking about a guy coming out of LSU. He did end up with we're talking about a spinal fusion surgery. That's a lot of guys. You're not even thinking you're playing football ever again, really, because it's just a dangerous thing that you really have to worry about. So seeing Damone Clark continue to progress, seeing him build, and I feel like now you're talking about your first solid full year again of being a starter and having that entire training camp and knowing what your position is on this team and your expectations. I think it was a big, nice sign, I guess, if you want to say, that getting his feet wet out there. DeMarvion Overshown was giving, I guess you want to say, the job or the duty of leading the team out of the huddle to break the game off. To me, it's not saying much except the fact that it is the coaching staff. Again, they're looking who to put in these positions to just see who can step up, whether it comes from being a leader, again, making plays out there on the field. I just want to see DeMarvion Overshown be out there and fly around because, again, after we get past the Leighton Vander Esch, we get past Damone Clark, there's so much uncertainty because, again, like we always talk about anyway, Dan Quinn is a big fan of the positionless type football, those hybrid, versatile type players. Outside of guys when you're talking about, of course, you know what your Micah Parsons are. You know what the guys like J-Ron Curse. We're talking about versatile type players out there on the field. We know exactly what they can do. Your Donovan Wilsons. What you want to be able to add and continue to add to that pot is as many flexible type athletes as you can. DeMarvion Overshown ends up with 6 tackles in this game. Early in the game, he has a big third down stop. He helps in a big third down stop. And one of the number one things I wanted to see, especially coming out of college, again, I'm also a Texas Longhorns fan, so I got to see him a little bit. I wanted to watch and see what exactly he was going to do. Playing linebacker in college and the NFL, two completely different worlds, because we're talking about, especially being in the Big 12, it's more of a spread out game. You have a spread out league itself. So we played a lot of spread offenses. DeMarvion Overshown will find himself in space a lot of times, but what you want to see in the NFL, you know, one thing is for sure, stopping the run especially. You're going to have to be able to engage and disengage off these blocks. And I want to see exactly how he was able to hit these gaps and fill gaps. He showed, a big step up in that. Because, again, what you're looking for after Damone Clark, your Leighton Vander Esch, is some, I guess you want to say, some consistency. We know exactly Jabril Cox is returning from injury, things of that sort. Mike McCarthy says this is the first time he feels Jabril is finally confident in himself and confident in his body. And now what you're going to look for is some more guys that can actually just show around, because I'm not worried about having enough bodies. At the end of the day, we have as many athletes and his defense is loaded across the board. That's not anything I'm concerned about. But just seeing DeMarvion Overshown take a step above and now, again, continue to develop for the rest of this training camp process and go into the regular season. DeMarvion Overshown is a name that we're going to have to keep our eyes and ears on for sure, especially because, again, one thing you can't have too many players. You can't have too many of in general on your team, but especially when you're talking about on the defensive side, it's just playmakers, X factors, guys that can make that one game-changing play that can flip the game completely on his head. And I feel like with Overshown, we are just now starting to see what he can kind of build himself into. It's just the very beginning. KaVontae Turpin, that name speaks for itself, especially talking about in the short time he's been here. He got, of course, we say the Pro Bowl nod last year as a returner. Whether you think he deserved it or not, that's not the question. But what KaVontae Turpin, I guess, up to this point, he's kind of lived a lot off of is his potential, his athletic potential. What he can be on potentially the offensive side, what he can be as a returner. To start this game, we already know towards the end of the season, especially last year, Turpin has some issues holding on to the ball. We're talking about bobbles. And sometimes even if he doesn't fumble, he's just not catching the ball cleanly every single time. He has a bad fumble. The defense is playing well to start the game. And we're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars had a few of their first team out there. So you're looking in the mix and you're saying, who exactly is going to make a play? We're talking about the Dallas Cowboys second team predominantly on defense. The defense was holding their own, and KaVontae Turpin goes to field a punt, and it ends up a fumble. The Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, recover it, of course, using their luck of that. And then score a touchdown, Christian Kirk, and then to Zay Jones, the 2-point conversion. Now the game is completely changed out of the nowhere with one bad, just again, special teams play that we cannot continue to have. KaVontae Turpin is going to have to make a name for himself, because at the end of the day, we're looking at guys like maybe a Deuce Vaughn. We're talking about some of these other guys that are going to be able to get potentially some opportunities when it comes to the return game. KaVontae Turpin is going to be having to live off of special teams and what his few chances may be on the offensive side. He has a bad drop early in the game, and it wasn't anything egregious, but it was considered a drop. So talking about 2 targets, 1 catch. KaVontae Turpin is going to have to continue to get improved and show that he can do much more. But like I said, that was it's a small takeaway. It's nothing to go too crazy about, because it is. Most of these guys, this is the first real contact. We're talking about not playing against your own team. But Turpin has got to clean up these small details if he's looking to be an actual contributor. Obviously, we know with no Dak Prescott out there, that means who exactly is going to be running the show. Of course, more than likely, it's going to be Cooper Rush. We see exactly what Cooper Rush has been up to this point of his career. He's going into the 6th season out of Central Michigan. Also helping lead the team to a 4-1 record after that we lose Dak Prescott in week 1 against the Bucs. Of course, obviously, more so on the back of what the defense was able to get done. But Cooper Rush, if anything, he's a steadying hand. He's not a guy I'm too concerned about ever losing us games, but that doesn't mean you're going to get anything spectacular. So if you get into a shootout, he is what he is. We have starters and we have backups for a reason. That's why it was big for me to see what Will Grier was able to accomplish. We're talking about when you're looking for who's going to be that guy behind QB1. Will Grier, to me, he can duplicate and kind of mimic more so what Dak Prescott can do. And I'm not talking skill set, obviously, or the level of player he is, but I mean things, his ability, things. I don't feel you have to change the offense as much with a guy like Will Grier as you will with a Cooper Rush, because what you were able to see, Will Grier got out of the pocket a few times, ends up with a nice touchdown throw to Jalen Tolbert. Again, a lot of it is just based off of the route running and guys being switched up, and again, just having a quicker system. Will Grier showed me some things. Also, as I just spoke on, Jalen Tolbert. It was a big game for him. Also, he has a nice catch downfield, deep pass, about a 30-yard gain, I believe, something of like that. The officials ended up calling offensive pass interference. It was a little ticky-tack, but he did come down with the catch prior to the penalty call. So it just showed Jalen Tolbert has kind of gotten himself back in the mix and figured out, starting to figure himself out as an NFL player. Because again, what Brian Schottenheimer has spoken about since he's been with the team, obviously intel and insight from the coaching staff from the year prior. Jalen Tolbert is in his playbook. He feels like a new player to the rest of the coaching staff. Obviously, getting offseason work in with Brandon Cooks, CD, Gallup. Of course, obviously, Dak Prescott has done wonders for him. So hopefully he can just grow and build and continue to add on to that going to the second preseason game against the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, first-round pick Mazi Smith is going to be the topic of conversation to some extent, because what you're looking for from Mazi Smith is to go out there and show that he belongs in this league. Because again, we do know playing for the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to get publicized, you're going to get criticism, you're going to get everything for what you can't do. So I'm going to look to see a Mazi Smith continue to just get better at pretty much using his hands, but his footwork. That's the number one thing. I say, if you want to talk about flaws, Mazi Smith up to this point, you want him to get quicker with his feet. But we're talking about a big towering guy. So he's not ever going to be this agile, quicker foot, D-tackle, pass rushing extraordinaire or anything like that. So to me, what I wanted to see is he going to have the ability to push the pocket? We know he also is going to be able to play alongside or have a guy also just with him and a Jonathan Hankins who can kind of teach him the ropes, especially when it comes to run stopping in the NFL from the D-tackle position. But Mazi Smith, he showed on multiple occasions in this preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars that he does have the ability to push the pocket, if anything. He's taking on double teams. Three men at certain points. You're watching him be chipped by running backs and an extra tight end. But Mazi Smith is going to be coming on through just for the simple fact. Mazi Smith, I don't want to go too crazy on anything that you're going to watch with him playing with other second team players, third string players. Again, we're talking about guys that are just hoping to make the NFL roster. Mazi Smith, he was built and brought in this team more so for what the Micah Parsones of the world can do. What also can a guy like the Leighton Vander Esch's, the Damone Clarks I spoke about, what a DeMarcus Lawrence can do. what he opened up for guys like Dante Fowler. Obviously, Monty Smith, you're never going to see what he's going to be able to bring your team on the stat sheet more times than not, because I feel his impact is going to be shown what he opens up for the rest of the defense. So I don't want anybody to get too crazy on a rookie still learning. Let's be clear. Is he a perfect player? No, by no stretch of the imagination. But Monty Smith is a work in progress, but he's also showing that he does have some things that are going to be able to be very useful to this defense. One of the biggest topics, obviously, this offseason has been the running back room. Who's going to be the number 2 guy behind a Tony Pollard? Can Tony Pollard be a feature back? Obviously, we do not have Ezekiel Elliott anymore with the team, at least for right now. So can Tony Pollard handle all those responsibilities and what comes with it? And again, who's going to be the guy behind Tony Pollard? Is it going to be a guy already on the team? Was it going to be a Malik Davis? You're looking at a Rico Dowdle, who's been probably injured previous years. We're talking about fighting through practice squad opportunities and everything like that. Is it going to be a guy that's drafted this past draft, Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State? A small kid, but he plays much bigger. So I'm not worried about the physicality of the NFL game when it comes to Deuce Vaughn. What worries me a little bit is just that his stature will have him, again, he's naturally going to have some limitations just because of that stature alone. And it comes to me more pass pro. Mike McCarthy, if he does talk about the guy that he thinks is the best pass blocker from the running back position, and we know how important that is in the NFL, it's Rico Dowdle. That's who he speaks about, being able to, I guess, just have more of those versatile capabilities. Malik Davis is a guy that I feel very good about when it comes to running the ball, but there were a couple times in this past game, Rico Dowdle it was showing that he's the better pass blocker. Malik Davis missed the blitz pickup. I've seen it, but at the same time, we're still allowing these guys to grow and get better. Rico Dowdle, I spoke about again, earlier in the game, catching a long 21-yard pass from Cooper Rush, but fumbles right before he gets into the end zone. So you cannot have these mistakes when it's such a close battle. Deuce Vaughn going into the end of the third quarter, middle of the end, third quarter, going into the early fourth. It turns into the Deuce Vaughn show. He showed exactly what I was so just hype about getting him out of this draft. He has the ability to be moved around. He can play a little bit of that slot. It's a 3rd and 3, I believe, from Will Grier. He hits Deuce Vaughn in the slot, a little bit of a leap and catch. He shows that he has that ability. Also, he showed that he can run through these tackles. And when you get Deuce Vaughn one-on-one in these wide open spaces, he's going to be terrible to have to consistently bring down because he does have that small stature, but he's stronger than he looks. And we saw it on multiple times. And again, we're talking about a close view. Also on the big run he has towards the end of the third quarter. And also we're talking about capping that drive off in the fourth quarter with a 4-yard touchdown run. The biggest thing you saw is that when he does get in these small spaces, these small, simple arm tackles are not going to get the job done. So Deuce Vaughn is one of the players, I guess, that stood out a little bit. And what you're going to be able to ask from him now is just to stack and build onto that. Because now what you also are going to obviously have to keep in mind, the O-line is going to be much better in the regular season. We're talking about, we're throwing guys out there. We're throwing Willetsko. We're throwing Brock Hoffman out there this past game to get some real reps. We're talking about Austin Richards out of North Carolina, another rookie draft pick. We're seeing what some of these guys were able to do, but Deuce Vaughn is going to be much more capable, and I can see him being used in more of a Ty Montgomery kind of role. If you remember going back to the Packers days, the way early Randall Cobb is being used, just kind of that Swiss Army knife kind of swapped all over the place a little bit, because he's going to have his place. You know what Tony Pollard is. Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle, these are some guys that are going to continue to have to show what they could do. Malik Davis also in there, but up to me right now, Deuce Vaughn is that second guy. Going into the game, obviously kicker is still such a topic that's up in the air, but the Dallas Cowboys chose to go into this first preseason game with Brandon Aubrey as the lone kicker on the roster. He was given all the responsibilities. So what did he do? I mean, he makes his one long field goal, I believe 29 yards or somewhere around there. Goes 2 for 3 on extra points. Not perfect, but you're looking to show that he can improve in that aspect. I, for one, am still going to bring in a veteran kicker. There are a few guys out there I've spoken about multiple times. I believe, again, you're still talking about some of these guys, looking at a Mason Crosby. You're talking about a Robbie Gould. Just some competition for him to light a fire. But the coaching staff, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, they spoke about it. What they're looking to do is just pretty much see if they take that pressure off of him of feeling like he has to look over his shoulder, will that help him calm himself down and be more consistent? we'll see. He has 2 more opportunities to show it. We'll see if this coaching staff itself looks to add more competition. I, for one, would, because again, you don't want to let something like special teams be a detriment to a team with such lofty, hopeful dreams and goals for this upcoming season. So we'll see how Brandon Aubrey continues to progress. And hopefully it's nothing but I guess you want to say only the way up from here. The Dallas Cowboys' second preseason game will be Saturday, August 19th against the Seattle Seahawks at 9 o'clock Central Time. We're pretty much going to see exactly just some of these young guys continue to develop, continue to get more opportunity. Hopefully we can have some guys that I'm also interested in seeing, possibly a receiver like David Durden. Has a nice big catch earlier, about a week ago during training camp. Has to leave the game with practice with a concussion. Hopefully we'll be able to see him get some opportunity in this second game. Hopefully you can continue to see a DeMarvion Overshown make some plays out there. Some of these guys are Deuce Vaughn. But what you're looking more so to do is see guys be healthy. Coach Mike McCarthy himself says he's not really expecting Dak Prescott or some of these starters to even really play at all in preseason. We're not talking about even a dress rehearsal of what we're become accustomed to. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I guess, like I said, you don't want to worry about rust a little bit, but you also want some of these guys to be able to get acclimated and just get that real feel for physical contact before the regular season. So we'll see how that strategy plays out. I appreciate you guys for checking it on out. Again, we will have the next preseason game next Saturday. We'll check it all out. We'll see you guys' opinions. I want to know what you guys thought about the first game. Was Mozzie Smith a little down for you in the first game, I guess? Or did Deuce Vaughn excite you? Do you have any worries about your Rico Dowders, your Malik Davises? What receivers interested? Just showed you a little bit from this past game. I'm going to say now, John Stevens Jr. That's a tight end that you want to keep an eye on for the rest of this preseason, because he could, to me, in my personal opinion, make a little bit of a push for that tight end 3 spot. We'll see. This team can go tight end heavy. I can see that potentially holding on to 4. We'll see. You guys are amazing. I appreciate the support. We will be right back here as soon as possible. Go Cowboys.